G'day Aussies. Excuse the daggy slang from someone in need of ocarism. This is a love letter to 25 million people and 7 million square kilometres of land. Land abundant in nature, beauty and space. It is not the same in here. I haven't seen a tree in 3 years. I relive every bushwalk, river, lake, beach with swims and picnics and psychedelic sunsets. I secretly mouth the names of places I've visited and driven through. I miss the sun. In my cell, the sunlight shines through the window, but I can stand in it for only 10 hours a year. Every year, the bedding is taken into the sun for 2 hours to air. When it came back last time, I wrapped myself in the doona and pretended I was being hugged by my family under the sun. I can't believe I used to avoid the sun when I was back in Australia, although knowing Melbourne weather, it will probably rain for the first 2 weeks after I return. Growing up as a Chinese Australian, I had two identities that would often fight for the upper hand, depending on the context and company. But in humour, the Aussie humour wins hands down every time. Even though we speak different languages and eat different meals, we laugh the same and have an eye for the absurd. We can take fun seriously and make fun of seriousness. It is the Chinese in me which has probably gone beyond the legal limit of sentimentality. So most of all, I miss my children.
Nick, thank you very much for reading out that part of her statement. Why is Cheng Lei making a public statement now?
Oh, look, I think the fact that it's 3 years is very poignant for her. And, you know, this is a message to the Australian people, really. It's trying to communicate with the Australian people who she is and what she loves about her country. And it's a country that she feels very lucky to have come to at a very young age and had the benefit of our warmth and multicultural nature and education and way of life, so she misses it.
Notwithstanding the circumstances that she's in, she seems able to retain a sense of humour. What kind of a person is she?
Wickedly funny, very, very determined, very, very smart. And somebody who is just full of life. I think anybody who knows Cheng Lei, you know, I've described her as a pocket rocket, and that's very, very appropriate. That's exactly what she's like. So she's vivacious, she's funny, intensely intelligent, wonderfully cynical at times. So yeah, we all miss her deeply.
Now, she's been able to write to you since September, just since September last year. How do you think, from her letters to you, how do you think she's coping?
I definitely notice more and more the toll that it takes on her in terms of the long-term separation from her children. That is, without doubt, the most difficult thing, and that's something that I'm seeing more and more in recent correspondence, that's for sure. And
how much do you think she holds back from you?
Probably a lot.
Let's just go back to the period of her arrest. Were you fearful for her before it happened, for any reason?
No, not at all. There was no reason, to be honest with you, for either of us to be worried about anything. There was nothing that, you know, it was. We're all dealing with the coronavirus crisis at the time. You know, her kids were bound in Melbourne and stuck and couldn't get them back, and that was a challenge. But no, there was nothing that gave either of us pause for concern.
Now, you may not want to answer this question, but do you know why they have detained her, given she gives such vehement denials of the allegations against her? Do you understand her detention?
No. Look, it's never been disclosed either to family or the Australian government or anybody like that. So the short answer is no. Never made sense to me then. And 3 years later, it makes no sense to me as well.
We mentioned before that she hasn't yet been told what the verdict is against her. Why is that important, that she has a verdict?
Well, I think as anybody listening and watching can imagine, that the ongoing uncertainty of how long this could be is enormously difficult. You know, so the reality under the Chinese legal system for an allegation, should it be upheld, of this nature, is it could be anything from a fine through to a custodial sentence of 10 plus years in jail. So essentially she has no idea what the system might or might not sentence her to, assuming it gets to that. So, you know, she's in limbo. And I think, you know, if you're sitting in limbo for effectively 3 years, it's enormously difficult.
And what are the implications for her of what is a very big diplomatic, strategic power play going on between Australia and China at the moment? Where does she fit into that?
Lei's case, I think, is very important to improving the atmospherics. And I think, you know, Australians and other people around the world watching this particular case, given the nature of who she is and what she did and so on, know about it, and it makes no sense to any of us. You would like to think these things are above politics. I certainly hope it is. And let's just get it resolved and her home to her family, and so she can get on with her life and her children can have their mother back.
I just want to come back to the statement and her conditions. You said before that you think she does withhold from you how she's doing. What is it that you think she is withholding?
Oh, look, I think it's probably, you know, she would no doubt go through very, very difficult times. You know, she only gets a window, as it were, to the outside world for 30 minutes once a month through the consular visits. And when she writes to me, I think she's full of optimism because that's her nature. But, you know, any of us would be in her situation for as long as they have been and been through what she's been through are going to have some pretty difficult times, that's for sure. And
are you aware of any of those?
Oh, look, certainly the early stage, the first 6 months of her detention was very difficult, yes. What's known as residential surveillance in a designated location is notoriously difficult.
And just finally, she ends the statement by saying how much she misses her children. How are they doing?
Look, it's, you know, she's missed her daughter going into high school. Her son will go into high school next year. Those are times you can't get back. You know, her daughter needs a mum going through these sorts of times, you know, going into sort of, you know, teenage, adolescent, you know, time of life. You know, it's where mum's guidance can be so valuable, and the same with her son. So it's hard, but they're doing their best, and you know, their grandparents, their grandmother in particular, do a wonderful job.
And just finally, is the Australian government, do you think, working hard enough on her behalf?
Yeah, I do think so. You know, in particular, Penny Wong and the Prime Minister have been great. I'm sure they will continue to make this an extremely significant priority, and I think if they do that, we'll hopefully get a resolution to this horrible situation very soon, and a mother can be back with her children.
Nick Coyle, I think all our audience would agree with that sentiment. Thank you very much indeed for sharing Cheng Lei's words with us this evening.
That's a pleasure, and thank you for your support, Sarah.